Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. And unfortunately, there will be no hearing and privilege of the floor today during this remote session, but we would encourage you, if you have comments that you would like to share, to please send them to us. We do read those and pay attention to those, so we would love to hear from you. Moving right along to number 4 is our superintendent's comments with Superintendent Schwartz.
Thank you very much, Dan. I just would like to chat a bit about the meeting I was in today on the phone with Schenectady County Public Health Services and neighboring school districts, preschools, and private schools. It's our every other week catch up. There seems to be a lot of confusion about whether or not teachers can currently get vaccinated. So on Friday, the governor announced that he was going to open vaccinations to people in Group 1B. And that would be educators. We're one of the groups in one of the groups of people in that group, the 1B group. This created quite a bit of confusion for folks because apparently the local health departments didn't know that was going to happen. We're not aware of it. And then some information was conveyed about testing sites, taking folks who are 1B, who have no intention of taking folks who are 1B members at this time. So this led to a lot of discussion over the weekend, people getting very worked up, and understandably so, thinking that somehow the schools had either access to the vaccines or access to someone who had access to the vaccines. So in my health department meeting today, I'd just like to share the things that were shared with us. So at this point, if you go to the New York State Department of Health website, there is a link you can click on that says check your eligibility. And I did that today. I am eligible for a vaccine. It then says, here are a bunch of places you can contact to get a vaccine. The first one on my list that came up was Ellis Hospital. The number I called was not being responded to. The second place on the list was the Schenectady City School District High School. It turned out they'd been listed in error. They have no vaccines and are not a pod. And I share that with you to help folks understand that the rollout has not been what the governor would wish. It is not technically within our ability as a school district to provide vaccines to people or to get people registered for vaccines. And everyone who wants a vaccine can do exactly what I did today and then start reaching out to folks on this list of providers with vaccines to see if they can get an appointment. But I want to make clear to people that that's not the school district's responsibility to get you signed up for a vaccine. That will be individual people's responsibilities, going about it, as I say, in the same way I went about it today. There was some talk about Shenandoah had a huge vaccination pod yesterday. Ellis Hospital did conduct vaccinations at Shen yesterday. They had 60 doses of the Moderna vaccine and over 400 people show up. So as the health department pointed out to us today, there is a shortage, perhaps not in the vaccines themselves, but in getting the vaccines to people who can get them to people. So again, I just want to reiterate for our staffing community, if you're interested in this, if you want to see if you're eligible, I would encourage you to get on the New York State Department of Health website, check your eligibility, check locations that are going to be offering the vaccine, get an appointment, or call your healthcare provider. But again, it's not going to be the school district that's going to be able to do that. We are working with CAP Region, as we have been regionally since the beginning of the pandemic, to see if there's a way to put together some sort of vaccination pod that school district personnel could access. But my sense is we are weeks from that. And finally, I would share with you that the Department of Health also shared with us today that 1B, people in this 1B group were not anticipated to be eligible before January 25th or 27th to around February 1st. So as the health department shared with us today, the governor's announcement on Friday caught them off guard, it was being suggested that folks in group 1B were suddenly going to get vaccines. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, the folks in group 1A, there are still lots of them who haven't gotten vaccines. So this is going to be a process. The school district is not withholding information from people. What we know, I have shared and will continue to do so. So thank you for that. I would gladly take any questions about that.
Thank you, Susan. Any questions from the board? It doesn't look like it. Did you have anything else for us, Susan, or are we good?
We're good, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then moving on to number 5. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll move that the board accept Central School District 2020-21 school comprehensive education plan as submitted.
I'll second.
Thank you, Bess.
So folks, we do have a presentation prepared for you. Mr. Cosmer is joining us. I'm just having a bit of trouble with one of our presenters. Oh, and we just figured it out. Hold on one second. There we go. All right, Mr. McCarthy, are you with us? Mr. McCarthy, are you with us? So folks, we're having just a bit of technical. Yes, are you there?
Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you, folks, for your patience. All right, I'm going to pass it to Mr. Cosmer to make introductions and to take you through the presentation.
All right, folks. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Thank you very much for having myself and a couple of my colleagues here this evening to talk a little bit about our SCEP plan. I appreciate the fact that you've already accepted the plan. Let me give you some broad strokes of what that longer version of the SCEP plan that you've received in advance of tonight's meeting. And really what you have is a culmination of months of stakeholder discussions and meetings and planning. And by stakeholders, I mean teachers, administrators, and parents and students. Really, to create one of these plans, it's pretty comprehensive, as the name would indicate. And you have to touch upon all areas of life at the middle school, so to speak. So what I want to talk to you about this evening, along with some of my colleagues, the academic heads, is why we're doing this to begin with. Why did we have a need for the SCEP plan? The work that's been completed to this point, which is the plan that you actually have. And then where do we go from here in the work that is going to be completed in the months ahead? So Karen, on these slides, can you go to a full version rather than just, so the slides on the left aren't being shown, or is that, if you can, yeah, just present the whole slide. If you can, you just go ahead to the next slide. I can talk to the next slide. There we go. Are you able to kind of make it? There you go. Okay. Thank you. All right. I appreciate that. So why are we here, and what exactly have we received our TSI, which is a Targeted School for Improvement designation, based off of? I can tell you that the designation itself is based off the Hispanic subgroup down there that you will see where it says TSI, and you'll see the performance indicators of one going from left to right over like the composite performance, student growth, all the way over to chronic absenteeism. However, I highlighted the whole area in red because while, yes, it is a Hispanic subgroup that, based on the performance and the attendance of that subgroup, got us a TSI designation, a lot of these issues are beyond just one subgroup. If you take a look at our Black, and ED stands for economically disadvantaged subgroup, you'll see that the chronic absenteeism numbers are at 1 there as well. And a lot of our 2s, and which would give you good standing, but really 2s are not 3s and are not 4s. We want 3s and 4s. 2s are really 1s in the waiting, as we like to say. We don't like to see 2s. So if you're looking at that block of subgroups, that's really the area of concern. And I would more specifically even say that the economically disadvantaged, which is the largest of those subgroups in that block, really have a lot of students that overlap from those other subgroups, the Hispanic subgroup, SWD is students with disabilities, and the Black subgroup. So of all those subgroups, I also want you to really focus on the economically disadvantaged subgroup, which was our focus for a lot of this planning, because a lot of our kiddos from those other ones are in that subgroup as well. So expanding a little bit more on that subgroup, Karen, if you can go to the next slide, you'll see that our population, a couple of these slides are really going to be kind of eye-opening. They were to me when I saw them, and they may be to you when you see them. But if you're taking a look at that economically disadvantaged part of our population, back in 2008 and 2009, it was 14% of our population, okay? In 2018-19, which is 10 years later, it's now 30%. So that percent of your population has now doubled, all right? Next slide. And let's take a look at all students, and I'm going to show you a comparison between all students and that subgroup of economically disadvantaged. So if you're taking a look at all students here, and all these green areas is where our students, the 6th graders are on the left-hand side, the 7th graders are in the middle, and the 8th graders are on the right-hand side. So if you were to take a look at 2019 or any particular year, you've got a snapshot of 4 years there. Everywhere where you're seeing light green or green is an area where our students are performing up to snuff. They're meeting their targets. And where you have areas that are pink or red, those are areas that we need to do a little bit better on. And there's each of those R numbers is like a value, like reading for information or reading for context, the individual standards. So that's looking at all of our students at Scotia Glenville Middle School in that 4-year snapshot. Now let's take a look at how in the same 4-year snapshot, that group of economically disadvantaged students did in ELA. So you could see, just by taking this contrast right here, that our largest of that subgroup population, the economically disadvantaged subgroup, is not performing to the level that they should be performing. There's a lot of areas of concern there, all right? And to be fair, you're looking at ELA, and I'm not, I hope Mark doesn't get mad at me in saying this, but to be fair, I could have done the same thing with math, and you would have seen a lot of the same type of contrast, okay? So let's go to the next slide, Karen. So, yes, while we have the one specific subgroup of the Hispanic that you'll see on the bottom received all 1s and gave us our TSI designation, what that then does is, with that designation and with this SCEP plan, you're required to create 5 goals based on not only the subgroup, but for the entire building going forward. You want an ELA goal, you want a math goal, you want a survey goal, a school selected goal, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, and then of course the chronic absenteeism goal. I say the whole building and not that particular subgroup, because any good thing that we do for any subgroup should be something that benefits the entire building. Any of our initiatives should have merit academically, socially, or environmentally. All right. So I'll turn it over right now briefly to Ms. Vacris, the academic head of ELA and social studies, and she can talk a little bit about the ELA goal.
Thank you. Good evening. So what we did in trying to create a goal for the English language arts was to look at the data we've had in the past and to see where the majority of our students, not any one particular subgroup, but the aggregate, perform poorly. And that one area was reading for information based on the state assessments and some of their iReady diagnostics. So we focused on that one standard, reading for information, and decided and averaged their scores, their aggregate score, and decided our goal would be to raise that score by the end of this year, even if it's 1%, 2%, 3% across the board, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It does mention the testing in April that usually takes place. That's not going to happen most likely, although it hasn't been announced yet. So what we're doing instead is creating our own assessment that will check for progress on that standard and could potentially, hopefully, fingers crossed, show growth for all the students across grade level. And that's what we're doing for English.
Thank you. And I would ask Mr. McCarthy, the academic head of mathematics, to do the same for the math goal.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Yes, we approached this with the same in the same manner that ELA did. We looked at the last 3 years of testing, 2017 to 2019, and came up with our focus standards, standards in which students underperformed, and we were able to come up with about 4 standards in, it is 4 in 6th, 7th, and then 1 in 8th grade, which we'll show you in a minute. Standards that we need to work on. So as a department, we've started this conversation. We're looking at how we're teaching, what our vertical alignment is with these focus standards, and changes that we may be able to make in order to help our students show growth by the end of this year. Like ELA, we have our backup plan. We're not depending on the state assessments. So we're working on creating a post-assessment to see how our students did on these focus standards at the end of the year. Again, trying to show growth, whether it be 1%, 2%, 3%. And yeah, we're working on one of Bob's initiatives this year was really working on articulating our learning initiatives at the beginning of lessons and ending our lessons with some sort of an exit formative assessment of students to really solidify the lesson and help them hopefully to remember what was taught during the class period. And that's it. And yeah, these are the 4 standards in 6th grade. You'll see there's some commonality here where in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, that EE represents expressions and equations. So we certainly have some vertical alignment to do there and to talk about how we can make the adjustments to help all students be successful. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. All right, so, and I'm going to go over 3 other goals, the other 3 goals that were part of that 5-tier plan that I talked to you about. And the first one was chronic absenteeism. Now, chronic absenteeism is an issue for many buildings, but in specific, we're talking about the middle school. You would see that, and it's a little hard to read. I hope you guys can read it. I know that in the larger SCEP plan, there's a lot of action steps. It's a pretty evolved plan, but I want to give you kind of the broad strokes here. That the chronic absenteeism, you had basically 31.8% of students classified economically disadvantaged were chronically absent. Now, that doesn't mean that they were out of the building for 31.8% of the time. Each week, myself and my guidance team, my guidance counselors, the social workers, we have what's called an office team, and we go over any student that's over 10% of the time that they're supposed to be in school, that they're out of school. And it doesn't matter if it's an excused absence, a legal absence, an unexcused absence, it's just absences from school. And I know that can be a tough pill to swallow because students could have deaths in the family, they could have medical issues that keep them out. But at the end of the day, anytime that you're over 10%, you are in fact someone that's chronically absent. 22.2% of my Hispanic subgroup fit that category. They were out of school 10% or more of the time. So as we're taking and we're looking and we're formulating a plan about what we're doing to go forward, one of the things is tartan advisory. We're actually doing this currently right now, and that is relieving staff. I think I have 23 staff members that are relieved from any type of a study hall or lunch supervision, any type of your normal supervisory duty. And then they get a group of maybe 2 or 3 students to act as an advocate for. And one of those things, obviously, not just academic, but is attendance. And certainly in this environment, unfortunately, attendance, students have a tendency to not have the same type of attendance that they do if we were in quote unquote a normal year. Some of the things going forward, school messenger system, which is attendance robocalls. You have to remember that the middle school and the high school as well, we are a period by period attendance. It's not a one, a daily attendance. Every period attendance is taken. So this will be running off period by period and then shooting out like a text message to parent or guardian with an attendance robocall. We're going to be piloting this, however, at an elementary school, I believe, probably the fall. I'm not sure if I have that right. Maybe the second semester. I see Karen smiling. I know that it's at some point in the future. I just don't know exactly when. And also attendance incentive program recognition. Really, the trend here is that if a student is absent or even chronically absent, they've already kind of disqualified themselves from any type of recognition. And sometimes especially with middle school kids, recognition goes a long way. So instead of just recognizing those students with perfect attendance, we could do weekly, bi-weekly, and most improved attendance. So even though you might have had a bad week, you're still in the game for next week. All right, so we want to expand how we recognize and reach out to our kids. All right, if you can go to the next slide. All right, that one is, because I can't see the top of it, I'm taking that is the school selected goal, grade level collaboration. Yes, I told you when I started speaking that we met with all stakeholders. One of the stakeholders was the faculty, and in particular, the faculty in grade 7 and grade 8 really expressed a desire to be able to meet more often to discuss student issues, to discuss transitional issues as kids come up from 6th to 7th and then 7th to 8th. But even on a weekly or monthly basis, to be able to meet with their counselor and speak about student issues or meet with their colleagues, share best practice, share things that may work RTI-wise in regards to individual students. Right now, the schedule does not call for that. The 7th and 8th no longer teams. So we're going to investigate if that should be reinstated. We're also going to look at, possible release time on Monday meetings. Would a block schedule be something that we want to investigate? So we're going to be investigating how our building operates in regards to collaboration. And a lot of times that goes back to the master schedule to provide those opportunities for folks to get together. And again, it also includes articulation sheets and things like that Mark was just talking about. A system by which staff, even between grade levels and within departments, can share information more effectively. All right. Our next goal, Karen, if you want to go forward to our next goal, is our survey goal. there was a lot of good news when it came to our survey goal, a lot of good news. Not only from the survey, but I want to back up and also tell you that the most rewarding part of this process by far was when I was able to do interview panels. I did interview panels with parents and we did interview panels with students. I appreciated all the honesty and I appreciated all the feedback. And what I found was, first and foremost, is that I personally need to do that more often. It was a wonderful exercise. I think that the parents appreciated it, the students appreciated it. So if I have to run a quarterly breakfast with the principal, we might have to do it virtual to start, but maybe in better times, we can do that more in person. But it really was a rewarding process in regards to what led to this goal. We also initiated a survey for every student to fill out in the building, and we asked things: do you feel comfortable in the building? Have you ever experienced bullying? Have you ever experienced any types of racial problems in the building? Do you feel supported? Do your teachers communicate with you? Are they available to you? And overwhelmingly, we had such positive responses to the level of communication from teachers home, the school climate, the fact that it's very much a community school. There's such a community spirit in the school. A lot of them were very poignant in saying that I really hate COVID because COVID destroyed everything that our building really was, the ability to get together and have dodgeball tournaments and have Tartan Pride Day and do all those great things. And I know I'm rambling here for a minute. I'm going to get to my point. I apologize. So there wasn't a lot I could take from the survey goal except for this. That graph was one question out of the survey, which kind of stuck out to myself and to my team. And that was this, is that I feel comfortable asking for questions in class or asking for help. And as you can see from that graphic, that nearly half of our students don't necessarily feel comfortable raising their hand in class, don't necessarily feel comfortable taking academic risks in class. And we feel, myself and the academic heads and Karen as we met, and students learn best from kids speak. When they're engaged in active debate in class, that's when these concepts really get internalized, when they can really share ideas with each other. So we need to provide staff with the tools that they need in order to create those types of environments where students are leading the conversation as opposed to teachers talking at students, but students leading the conversation and diving deeper into these concepts. So I have to hand it to Sue Vacris, who came up with, did a little research and found this QFT, which is question formulation techniques. And we're going to be pursuing that with some professional development. And it's not just a one-time deal. We're going to be engaging in this going forward, in which we'll train our staff to make our kids feel more comfortable in really taking over the conversations in class. And the good part about this QFT process in PD going forward is that they're going to address how to do this both in person and hybrid, okay, or remote or virtual, because it's let's be honest, it's more challenging when you have 5 kids in front of you and you have 25 that are virtual to have those types of conversations where people aren't stepping all over each other, even technology wise. So really what that was is a very broad strokes overview of what you're seeing in the larger document that you've been given, the SCEP plan. And I'm certainly open, and as well as the folks that are here with me, helping me tonight, to answer any questions if you have any questions.
Thank you, Bob, and Mark and Sue, I appreciate it. Any questions for our panelists?
Hey, Bob, Rick Frederick here. How are you?
Hi, Rick.
So it sounds like absenteeism may be a big driver that you're looking to improve initially.
Yes.
So once you have them in school, what are staff and teachers going to do to improve their skills so they're scoring better in ELA and math?
Well, that goes to the math and ELA goals that the academics had spoke to, and I will tell you that one of the eye-opening things was for all of us when we had a 3-day visitation. Okay, it wasn't from the state, but it was from the person. Her name's Teresa Billington, and she kind of coordinated all this work with us. And we really took 3 days and went in just about every single classroom. And one of the things that, despite all the positive things that were happening in the classroom, one of the things that we all kind of noticed when we came back to the table, we went off in these like groups of 2, and then we would reconvene. One of the things that we noticed is that a lot of times we aren't doing the simple things as stating the objective. And Mark talked about this a little bit earlier, stating what's the objective? What are we learning here today? And why is it important to learn this concept? I hate to use a political one, but if we popped in on one, they were talking about the Electoral College because it was right prior to the election. And the students really need to understand, why is it important to learn about the Electoral College? What am I gaining about learning about this? So our teachers need to do a better job of stating the objective up front, revisiting it, okay, checking for understanding, going through the lesson, and then, like Mark was saying, having a closing ticket that said, okay, what did we take out of today? And be able to take a couple minutes rather than just always focusing on going next, but take a couple minutes and reassess. Are we getting what we are putting down, so to speak, to put it in layman's terms? Are the kids getting what we're putting down? Because, especially with mathematics, it's like building blocks. We can't go forward to the next step unless you have the baselines in order to go forward. So I know that's a long-winded answer. I hope I answered your question, but that's just one of the areas right there.
That makes sense. And that probably help every single student, not just economically disadvantaged, kind of right. The preface, the meat, and then the follow-up. So did you also do a density map for math like you did for ELA? The green, pink, and red, the density map chart that you showed us?
We did, although I don't have it. I can forward it to you. I can get it. Actually, Teresa Billington was nice enough to bring that to us and shock us all out of coherency one morning. So I'm sure I can get it for you from Teresa Billington if you're curious about that. But she did show it. It looks pretty much the same, unfortunately.
Yeah, if you could provide that to the board, just a simple email whenever you get to it, I would appreciate that. And that's all I have for Dan. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, Rick. Other questions or comments that we can help with?
I just have a comment. I think, I really appreciate you guys looking into this and really coming up with new ways of learning for our students, because not every child learns the same way. And I think that's something that we need to focus on. Your QFT, I think, is a great idea. I think that will be great for students to learn going forward. And not only do I think that'll be great for our middle school and our high school students, but I think for our younger students that, having those questions and talking about topics, I think is the way of learning. And I think that maybe we should look at, broadening that across all of our buildings.
Absolutely.
Great. Anything else before we let them off the hook here? Karen?
Dan, I would just like to give a compliment to this leadership team. Truly, when you get an accountability designation, it takes you aback because everyone is absolutely working as hard as they can. And when you get an accountability designation during a pandemic and you are asked to do more on top of already doing more, I have to really give a compliment to the leadership team and to the middle school teachers and staff. They truly rose to this challenge. They did deep, hard work in the middle of already doing deep, hard work, and they have embraced it. As we roll out short and long-term plans, I fully expect this energy to continue because when you take a hard look at what you're doing and where you are and you see things to be changed, I think that the middle school really pulls together around this idea and topic. So huge compliment to the admin team and the staff for pulling together the way they did, coming up with the goals that they did, and making the go forward plan. So just an extra compliment.
That's great. Well deserved. All right. Then hearing nothing, I think there's a motion on the table to vote to approve the school comprehensive education plan.
Dan,
Sure.
just on page 19 in the spring benchmark, I think I had noticed that the subgroups were the same. Is the plan going to be amended, the modified plan here going to be amended to reflect the proper subgroup or language that they're about?
I don't have the actual plan in front of me. Was that the one that you had a question on earlier today, Mr. Frederick? Was it the 2.2 or something
Yes.
like that?
Yeah, just currently the language may not be correct or it can be amended. Before I vote on it, I just want to know if it's going to be changed or left the same.
Yeah, I think, and if I'm not correct, I can take a deeper look. I looked at it today, and basically, it actually is the same because the 2.2 is for the larger economically disadvantaged subgroup, which the Hispanic subgroup is a part of, because of the overlap between those two groups. I thought I reached out to Miss Susan Schwartz on that, but.
And you did, Bob, and I did send that information that you shared with me out to the board. They may not have seen it yet, but yes.
Okay, all right.
No, I've seen it, and I'm only asking because you're saying that your spring benchmarks are essentially the same, but you only want one benchmark to be a few percentage points different than the other. So it's not, it's almost the same, it is the same benchmark with different percentages.
All right, well, I could take a deeper look at it tomorrow because I know it shouldn't be the same. There should be an increase. Excuse me, I apologize, a decrease. There should be, an improvement in the benchmark.
So can I jump in? So what I think is that they're not coming from the same place. So in our original data set that we got from the state, we have different, they're called MIPS. So we have different targets based on different subgroups. So when you're seeing on page 19, no more than 21.5% of the economically disadvantaged subgroup will be identified as chronically absent. Are we looking at the same portion?
Yes, it's 25.1 is the first benchmark, yes.
Yes, so I see what you're saying. So Bob, in the plan, it says economically disadvantaged in both rows instead of economically disadvantaged and Hispanic. So
okay.
we can amend that.
Yes.
We can go back in and amend that. So you're both actually saying the same thing. That Bob, you're correct. They are different. You're correct in that they're listed the same. So we do need to change the appropriate one to being the Hispanic subgroup.
Okay.
And yes, that will be fixed tomorrow.
Sorry. Great. So with that change as noted, all those in favor of approving this?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So number 6, can I have a motion here?
I'll motion to accept the intent to develop a solar project on Freeman's Bridge Road with a payment in lieu of taxes agreement for the same.
I'll second.
Thank you. Tori, did you have anything you wanted to say here, or we're good? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Go ahead.
So basically, the solar company put us on a 60-day notice. And if we didn't do what the board is authorizing tonight, when that solar farm got built, you'd only get to buy the land on the tax rolls, none of the improvements that go with it. This allows us to benefit through a payment in lieu of tax agreement to see the assessed value be reflected and some kind of pilot agreement for the improvements, which could be multi-million dollars of improvements, could be nothing. But this protects the district going forward. And I put that in your packet, but I hope that explains it a little better for you.
Okay.
Okay.
So do we know what percentage the pilot's at right now, or
No,
it's just on future work?
it's a future pilot. There'd be discussions with the superintendent. Probably the town would come in because they would be assessing it. But this, without doing this on the real property tax law, we don't have within 60 days. We would just get the value of the land going forward. We'd have no, would not get any benefit in the tax rolls or in our tax levy from any improvements reflected by the farm, solar farm.
Okay,
So it's a prudent move.
great. Any questions on this before we vote? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
I,
opposed? And any abstentions? Great. Motion carries. Number 7, resolution to accept and establish the scholarship.
I'll motion to accept the establishment the Glenville Hill Fire Department Auxiliary Scholarship.
Second.
Thank you, Al. Any questions on this? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstain? Great. Number 8.
I'll move communications A through G, staffing 1 through 6, placement of students with disabilities, and the minutes from December 14th as submitted.
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions on all that?
No questions, Dan, but I just would like to thank Mrs. Donovan and Mrs. Leffler for their service to Glendale. Being up here for a long time on the Hill, both of my boys were part of that. So if you're on the meeting, Ms. Donovan, Ms. Leffler, thank you very much. We all appreciate your years of service to our community.
Thank you, Senator. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, then that takes us to the internal claims and treasurer's report. Drew, anything about the treasurer's report we need to know?
Drew's telling us it's all good.
It's all good, excellent. Anything about payroll warrants 17 or 18? Any questions there? And any questions about the check warrants A22, H12, A23, or H13? Great. There are nothing, I guess we move those for audit. Is that the right thing to do?
Correct. File them for audit.
Yeah.
For audit. Awesome. Other business. I didn't have anything. Did anyone have anything for other business?
I was wondering if we could up. Oh,
Go ahead, Rick.
I'm sorry, Susan. I think I cut you off unintentionally.
No, I worked the other way. I cut you off. Go ahead, Rick.
Okay. I was simply looking for an update as to where we stood in having to test, a certain percentage of our student body and staff population.
That's an excellent question. We are gearing up to test, and by that I mean, you folks remember you approved the memorandum of understanding between the district and the Schenectady County Public Health Service that allowed me to apply for BINEX tests, the rapid antigen tests that schools could use. We've received our tests. Karen, Megan, and I are working on a rollout plan that includes voluntary consent for parents and staff members who would choose to be tested if in fact we get to that point. You probably are aware, Rick, the county average is above 9%. At one point, if you were above 9%, you were going to be designated a zone. A region would be a zone, and then in the yellow zone, we would need to test 20% of our students. In an orange zone, it's 20% of our students, and in a red zone, it'd be 30% of our students. However, the governor changed the metrics a bit and went to considering both infection rate and available hospital beds. So there haven't been any new designations. I'll be participating in a meeting on Wednesday morning to talk about whether we would use our Binex test to do surveillance testing. That wasn't the original intent under which we applied to get Binex tests. So we're trying to see if that's really possible. Tomorrow, we're going to put together a video that shows a staff member having a rapid antigen test and a student having a rapid antigen test. Both of those tests performed by one of our nursing staff, and that video and the consent form and the letter about what we will do if we get to the point where we're testing will all be ready for distribution no later than early next week. So we're moving in that direction, but at this point, we're not required to test. And so let me say this. So I'm a little worried about using my Binex test for surveillance. If one, they wouldn't count then if we were in a zone, and that we had used up our tests and couldn't get more. So those questions about can we use Binex tests that way? Can we use them in advance of being designated a zone? And if we are designated, will those test results still count, or would we have to start over again? Those are some of the questions that we're tackling through CAP region and the area health departments on Wednesday. But we're preparing as if we're going to test at some point.
Is there a requirement that it's just 20% throughout the entire school district, or does it have to be a certain percentage by school?
It's 20% of your in-person students and staff, and that includes folks like bus drivers, cafeteria workers, buildings and grounds, custodians. So it's 20% of all of those folks and our students and our teachers and our admin. And I would hope that we would be able to have 20% of our in-person folks voluntarily identify themselves to each other, to us, if we test. And then if we're below the below the region's rolling average, there's a period where we will not have to test again. But we're going to start, Rick, assuming that anyone who gets tested will do so voluntarily.
And so really, I wanted to ask like the communication of that, but since they're volunteering, they're going to be part of a list. And so they'll know because they've already volunteered for it, essentially, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So not everybody will have to get communicated. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other new business? Or other business? All right. Again, unfortunately, we're not able to do hearing and privilege of the floor today. Please send us an email, send the board an email, or send the superintendent an email, who I'm sure she'd be happy to forward it along to us. If you have thoughts and ideas. Do we need executive session? I don't think so. Great.
I think we covered everything.
All right. Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. I'll second.
Excellent. Thank you both. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks,
Good
Dan.
night,
Good job,
everybody.
brother.
Stay safe.